Brought to you by the Minority Media Association and the Broadcasting Club at UWM, celebrating diversity in your area.
Bringing my community to you.
Identifying issues that are important to everyone. Embracing individuality.
Welcome to the U-View.
Hello, and welcome to the U-View, presented by the Minority Media Association at UWM and the Broadcast Club at UWM. I'm your host, Shakara Robinson, president of the MMA.
And I'm Crystal Lewis, secretary and treasurer of the MMA.
This is our very first show with the Broadcast Club, and we are very excited to bring you a program that invites topics of diversity and tolerance in the media to the table.
The U-View represents what the MMA is all about, issues that either encourage or hinder diversity in the media. The word minority does not only focus on race, it includes gender, sexual orientation, and religion, all of which has a place in media culture.
So let's get started. We have a great show lined up for you. Today's guests are bloggers, but not your average everyday bloggers. These are two of the most outspoken and sometimes controversial bloggers in Milwaukee.
Aaron Rodriguez is a freelance journalist for El Conquistador Latin newspaper and a full-time firefighter and paramedic in Racine. He also owns the Hispanic Conservative, a blog he started in 2008 that focuses on local politics and Latino issues.
Deborah Haywood, a.k.a. Wonder Woman, is an average citizen by day and freedom writer by night. Deborah is a black conservative focused on a variety of issues that affect everyone, especially in the black community. She too has her own blog, the Wonder Blog, and she also writes for a blog that I write for, the Milwaukee Drum. So let's welcome Aaron Rodriguez and Deborah Haywood to the show. Welcome to the show, you guys. Welcome to the U-View. Thank you so much for being our first guest. Let's get started, shall we? Let's start with you, Aaron. We'll just go through a series of questions and you both can answer. Now, you both have individual blogs. Tell me about your blog and how it got started.
Back in 2008, like you said, I started the blog shortly after President Obama was elected to cover Latino issues from a conservative standpoint. Our view of the Latino community is generally a conservative view in terms of traditional values, in terms of school choice, freedom, faith, family, things like that. The Hispanic community is generally pretty conservative speaking, but they do not generally vote Republican. This is kind of an interesting dynamic that I wanted to explore by opening up my blog and to cover some of these issues, try to figure out why this is going on, why this unique dynamic is taking place. Since then, I focused a little bit more of my time on county politics, not so much on national politics when I first began the blog. I figured that I could probably affect a little bit more change on a more local level than on a national level.
And Deborah, you have your own personal blog as well too, right? The Wonder Blog?
I do. I did start with the Milwaukee Drum, and I usually do a Wednesday segment, Wonder Woman Wednesdays. I too started blogging conservatively for about 2 years ago. I started as a person who was giving commentary quite a bit to the Milwaukee Drum, and then they asked me if I would provide a conservative viewpoint to that site. And from there I started my own blogging site just because some of the people wanted to, have conversation that was outside of the scope of the Drum. So I didn't want to disrespect their space and started using my own space to talk about, well, we started nationally, and of course we went to community, local issues, things that affect us daily, and to make change in the community, especially in the inner city where you see so much crime and violence, and you know that by talking about the things, you can actually make a direct impact on people.
Now, again, this question both of you guys can answer, since both of you do have blogs. So how did you guys promote your blog when you first started it, especially since yours has been around about 4 years? How did you promote it in the beginning?
I tried to send my articles out to national websites. I know one of them, called The Intellectual Conservative, began publishing some of my stuff and just started hitting the national stuff. I always thought it was very interesting that the national politics is a lot easier to write about because there's so many sources out there that you can get involved in, and you can pick and choose which venues, which topics you wanted to talk about. Whereas as I started getting involved more local politics, it became a little bit more difficult. You actually had to do journalism to find the stuff because, you know, some of the stuff you're interested in wasn't being talked about, so how are you going to get the information unless you get it yourself? So I began promoting my stuff more locally by sending in my stuff to, you know, some of the talk radio hosts, by publishing my stuff on WIS Opinion, which is a local website that publishes, you know, blogs, you know, to get a kind of an alternate viewpoint. They also publish, you know, republish the articles on, you know, from Journal Sentinel, Milwaukee Drum, others. They don't republish, they publish the links, so it takes you to the websites.
Okay.
That was where I started making a splash a little bit more locally.
All right, so it kind of worked as a little advertisement as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they're
that's
pretty good
great.
about that, yeah.
And what about you, Deborah?
Well, definitely social networking has helped a lot, using the different things that are out there. It's a little easier for me because there's not too many black women conservatives in Milwaukee. So a lot of people find me and they're upset, or they want to discuss some of the things with me or challenge me on some of the issues. So a lot of people find the website or find me somehow, and we discuss and go back and forth and just have discussions. So it works out that way, and the message spreads, and either we, you know, spread in positivity, or, you know, the news gets out there that there's some interesting conversation going on. So.
Now, Aaron, you do write for El Conquistador. Am I saying that right? Conquistador?
El Conquistador.
Conquistador.
Okay. How'd you get started with that? And does your writing for that paper influence your writing on your own blog?
A lot of the stuff that I write for El Conquistador gets published on my blog.
Oh, okay.
You can, you know, if you read it, you can tell I use the word we a lot. We did this, we did that. El Conquistador did an open records request, for example. I began writing for El Conquistador about a year after I began blogging. The publisher of El Conquistador, Victor Hakey, emailed me through my blog and read some of my stuff. And he read one article that really hit him, was the one I wrote on fighting for the soul of the Hispanic community. That was the title of the article. And he emailed me and said, I have a proposition for you. When can we meet? So we met over at a small diner, had lunch, and he said, well, what can I do to get you to write for me?
Wow.
So I said, well, you know, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel is publishing community columnists for $25 a piece. We can start with that number, you know. So he made me an offer, and I decided to do it. And honestly, I would have done it without the money, you know, because it was an opportunity to get a little bit more exposure and to actually write for a community newspaper.
Now, how both of you are conservative minorities. Now, how do you manage being a conservative minority, and do people judge you for being a conservative minority?
You want to take that one?
I think so. I think there's some expectations that people have when they meet you, and when you define yourself, I usually tell people that black conservatism goes back to our African roots, and was practiced in long ago in tribes, and was brought to America, and then practiced by people like Booker T. Washington and people like that, and that it also has religious ties as well. They begin to see that it's not something that just came along with Ronald Reagan, that we actually have some background and history that we brought with us to this country.
All right.
What's the most controversial post or any type of post that's generated the most negative feedback from people? And why do you think it was? That can go for
Either one of you.
I'm trying to remember.
Are there just that many?
Oh, what about you? The most
None at
memorable
all,
one.
right?
Most memorable? Well, I've written a lot. My blog's pretty prolific, spanning over 4 years. I'm not exactly sure I can remember. I get a lot of negative feedback, you know, being, you know, a minority conservative. I've been called coconut. You know,
That's
white
a
on the
slur?
inside.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
never heard of that
yeah.
one. Okay.
It's one that's used a little bit more in the Latino community.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's, you know, white on the inside, brown on the outside, you know, that kind of. But you know, the Latino community is very hard to stereotype in that way, because there are a lot of conservative roots in the Latino community. A lot of it comes with religion. You know, the vast majority of the Latino community is Roman Catholic, and another smaller portion of it is Pentecostal. So, you know, there's a lot of conservative roots involved just being brought up into the church. So a charge like that rings a little bit more hollow when you consider how we're all brought up, you know. Just because they vote Democrat doesn't mean that they're not conservative, and that's a big myth that needs to be deconstructed in the Hispanic community.
And what about for you, Deb? I know we both have gotten some negative feedback, you know.
Yeah.
And I know we've had to talk about it a few times because I'm like, you know, but
Right.
So how do you deal with criticism?
Well, first of all, I'm pretty thick-skinned. To be a black conservative, you definitely have to be. And I also remember that sometimes there's a lot lost in the writing, that the personal nuances that you would share with someone, it's not in the writing. So the writing can sometimes be cold. And so I remember that. I think the most controversial blog that I talked about was when there was protesting at Mesmer Prep, and people were not happy.
I remember that one.
Right. People were not happy, but I felt that the kids' day should not be interrupted. The school day to me is very valuable. I taught for 13 years. And so just to get those kids in the building means a lot, and to get them there educated means a lot. And to have their day disrupted was disrespectful. And those people felt that they have a right to picket and protest the governor wherever he goes. And I feel that there's some places that are off limits. Where his kids are playing football is off limits. And those people felt differently than I did. So yeah, I just kind of took it as we're just going to have to agree to disagree. But I guess I don't feel like I'm right or wrong about anything. I just feel that, you know, that's my conviction and I stand on it. So.
And just a quick one for you, Aaron. Do you think bloggers are journalists? Why or why not?
There's a little bit of journalism involved in blog. I think for the most part they're probably not. There's not as much accountability involved on a blog. You can say almost what you want, when you want, with very little retribution in terms of lawsuits or liability being held. When I started writing for El Conquistador, I noticed that I had to change the way I wrote.
Let's take a quick break. When the U-View comes back, we'll see what local issues are bugging Aaron and Deborah, and we'll get their take on the Trayvon Martin case. So stick around.
Addiction and behavioral health research at UWM and Aurora Sinai Medical Center is conducting research studies on innovative treatments for problem drinking. If you're 18 or older and feel you drink too much, you may qualify. If you're eligible, you'll receive free counseling and/or medication. There is no charge for your participation. Call now to see if you qualify for these studies at 414-219-3509. All inquiries are strictly confidential.
Milwaukee. Visit uwm.edu for information.
This one
A physics lecture ricochets off a middle dish in orbit. A business law seminar lands on a rooftop in Montana. Each day, through our satellites and telecourses, public television is reaching out across America, offering people in big cities and small towns alike learning services that might otherwise be unavailable. Courses in math, science, and foreign languages. Courses for people with families and full-time jobs. Courses that might even help teachers teach better. Public television. In our classrooms, the curriculum is vast and the seating capacity unlimited.
Welcome back to the U-View. Today we're joined by Aaron Rodriguez and Deborah Haywood, two professional bloggers from Milwaukee, telling us about their experiences in the blogosphere.
So we talked a little bit earlier, so now how about each of you just tell me a little bit about your backgrounds and how you grew up.
And how that affects your writing.
Conservative view.
Well, I grew up in the 70s here. Was fortunate to see the tail end of the civil rights marches and protesting for fair housing in Milwaukee in the 70s. I'm actually biracial, so it was an interesting background growing up and being the only biracial family in the neighborhood.
White and black?
Okay.
Yes, my mom is German and my dad is African American. So it just provided some, interesting background, getting to know a little bit of both cultures and growing up in those cultures.
And what about you?
Grew up in the 90s in the Milwaukee County area. Families from Texas immigrated up for work up in Baraboo and served in the farm fields there. I went to a private school, where race is not really a defining issue in a lot of private schools, especially the Catholic schools. My politics has been influenced by my family. My mom's side of the family is very conservative, and I'm also biracial as well. My father's Latino, my mother is non-Latino, would probably be a better way of saying it.
Okay.
And been influenced by her family in terms of my politics, although on my father's side, they wax mostly conservative as well, with a few that aren't, but most of them are. And that probably is affected by their religion as well. So grew up conservative, and when I began writing as a conservative, I thought that it's good to highlight some of the Latino aspects of my culture. So.
And what about you, Deborah? Did you grow up conservative, or was this a decision that you made on your own as you went into adulthood?
It was a decision I made in the 90s. In the 70s, my parents were definitely Democrats, liberals. But then as I, grew up in the inner city of Milwaukee all of my life, the one thing I noticed that we were dependent upon that never changed was our dependency on the Democrats. And I felt that we were giving ourselves to the party without getting much. And I started to look at other ideologies and things that answered some of the questions that I had and also made me feel a little bit better about some of the convictions that I had. I too am Roman Catholic, so it just didn't jive with me, some of the things about life and when it starts and things like that. And some of those things I found being conservative. Also, when I added the African piece, going back in learning about African conservatism, it really fit with where I was at the time.
Now, do either of you two think that blogging will take the place of traditional media in the future?
Absolutely not.
No?
I think that blogging, although is very important in terms of keeping the media honest, the media does the heavy lifting. Blogs are largely commentary. You get a few that will go out and break news, but for the most part, I see them, at least on a local level, as commentary, providing opinions on stuff that's already been covered by the media.
All right. Outside of blogging, what other media-related activities do either of you enjoy?
Well, I still do.
Facebooking?
Yeah, I definitely do. Wonder Woman has her own Facebook page, and we do have a lot of discussions. I also roam around on the internet and discuss with others. I also do public speaking engagements since I did teach females for 13 years at high school. A lot of people like to know how to teach to a multicultural setting, especially dealing with discipline and behavior and how to get them motivated. So I still do some of that too.
All right, cool. Let's get into some local politics going on here in Milwaukee. Wonder Woman, I know you did a piece about this on the Drum. What did either of you think about the District 12 race between Jose Perez and Alderman Jim Witkowiak? Witkowiak decided that he's not going to do the recount after all. Who do you think would better represent that area?
All right, well, I suppose I'll take this one. Well, I think probably Witkowiak would probably represent. He's got more experience in the area. I liked the credentials or the people who are backing him, the people who are working on his campaign. I don't know either one of them very well. I have met Perez once at an event. But when I see the people that are getting behind him, the people who are endorsing him, I can't help but say, well, is this really a candidate that will promote fiscal conservatism in the Hispanic community? And I just don't see that. Whether Witkowiak is far better on the issue, I really can't say, but you know, some of the issues that are important to me as a Latino would be, what's their position on school choice? Perez didn't answer that question. He wouldn't get involved in it. And that was something that got me kind of wondering a little bit too. You know, and I also saw, you know, labor getting behind him, and you know, in some of the organizations that were willing to back him, and you know, it makes me kind of wonder a little bit more about him. To me, he's more of a mystery man at this point. So.
Okay. What about you, Wonder Woman? I know we had that
Yeah,
piece on
I
the
read
use
your
of the
piece.
N-word from Perez. What did you think when you heard that story?
When I read that and then I read his response to it, I was really concerned because this is his number 2 person who's using this word, and not only the word, but his post was full of vulgarities, which makes me think if your number 2 person is so off kilter that he can just come unglued like this, what does that say about you? Because that person does speak for you. And that was a big issue for me, that he could use that word so freely on Facebook and not be held accountable for that. And the other candidates seem to me to be more stable. That's not my district, so I wasn't as familiar with it, but he seemed more stable. He had some ideas. He took time to answer in length questions that people posted on Facebook instead of shunning away from questions or deleting them off the site, and that to me showed character.
Now, to get into something that, you know, has been all over the news, the recall election against Scott Walker, where do you guys see that going?
Nowhere.
Do you think Tom Barrett, do you think the mayor can win it this time?
That's a really good question. No, it's been something I've been asking myself for a while. You know, whether Scott Walker wins will be, I think, premised on how this John Doe investigation goes.
Yeah.
You know, if they come out with something that they can really pin on him, that could create a problem no matter who the candidate running against him is. I think whether Barrett or Falk, I think either one of them, if you'd asked me this question maybe a month ago, I would say Barrett has the better chance of beating Walker in a head-on-head. Because, you know, Falk is further to the left. She is a relatively unknown who, you know, is got the union backing and has pledged to undo the collective bargaining reforms that Walker put into place. But now information is coming out about Barrett that he had attempted to do something very similar that Walker did at the same time Walker was doing it. You know, which would be very hard, I would think, for unions now to get behind him and say, this is our man, when unions are the ones that, for the most part, are leading the charge on. I wouldn't even say the Democrat Party is leading the charge on recalls. It's been unions, for the most part, shipping in people from out of state, you know, and organizing on a heavy level inside the state. So, really good question. I would probably, if I had to pick, I would probably still have my bet on Barrett.
What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm so upset at Tom Barrett because I don't think that the night that you win your mayorship back, you start talking about running for governor. I thought that was disrespectful to the city. I remember when he lost his first bid for governor, he told us all these wonderful things he was going to do. he hasn't gotten around to them. The same person that goes to the churches to talk to us when it's election time, I don't see him in the black community doing anything else unless it's that time. And I want to see a visible mayor putting in action things that he would do on a statewide level. And since he hasn't done anything on the city level that I can see, from my little beacon on 12th and North, I feel that he doesn't deserve to get a chance to be at the statewide level. As far as fault is concerned, as long as she keeps posting those commercials where she's standing there with that mean grimace on her face, I'm not certain how far she's going to get because she doesn't come across as personable. And I think that people really are starting to see, you may not like Walker, but we have to start admitting some of these things, these Act 10 things, the school reports are showing that these things are actually starting to work. And if we're really truly invested in our kids, it's about their future. And if it means admitting that Scott Walker actually put something in that's working, we really need to take a step back and say that, look, it's about our kids.
Now, in elections past, we've seen a pattern of low voter turnout in the minority communities. Why do you think that is, and what do you think can be done about that to draw more voters out to the polls?
Well, what I think Milwaukee did in terms of the Latino community, which I think I could probably speak for better, it would be, you know, putting the ballots in Spanish and in English. That would create less confusion. Show that, hey, these elections, you know, they're for you too. They're not just for non-Latinos. In terms of, you know, I would think it would start at a very, almost a childhood level to talk about government, the importance of government, the importance of the people say in government. And it has to be almost a culture shift in a school level, high school, you know, from parents saying, hey, you can't expect things to go your way if you're not willing to do something about it. You can't cry if you're not participating, you know, and I think that message needs to be put out there a little bit more. In terms of a hard, you know, a targeted approach, you know, that's a difficult question to answer. So,
what about you, Deb? Do you have a take on that?
I do. I think there's a lot of apathy in the inner city because we have elected people to represent us, our own people, and they have failed us. Some of the families that we have let lead us for years and years have led us down the wrong path or no path. I think people see that there's no action, no hope, no progression from their votes, so less and less people come to vote. And I think we need to actually start to change that thinking and actually vote out someone or actively say we're going to take this action so that we get our voice back, to show people that we can actually do something and make a change by actually doing something different than the norm.
All right. What did you think about the charges brought against George Zimmerman, and where do you see the case going? In the, you know, the Trayvon Martin case.
That case has so many tentacles because you have at the beginning you have a poor young man who's passed away. You have a man who did not follow the 911 operators. Now you have Democrats and Republicans going at it with the legislation, which really doesn't apply. You have the sharks, I don't know what else you could call them. The people that come out when there's something for them to gain, like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. And then you have, at the end of all this mess, you have a poor family who's grieving for their loved one. I'm a little perturbed that it takes a white man killing a black boy to bring us out together. We should be this upset every time a young black man gets killed. And of course, I'm a little biased because December 5th, my nephew was murdered for no reason at all. And I'm outraged. And to see, you know, that this is what takes our community to get together, I think we should be outraged at every single loss that has affected our community.
And Aaron, do you have a quick comment on that as well?
Well, there's a personal way of looking at it, and there are also some political ramifications. I think it's fascinating how Republicans and Democrats are kind of getting involved in this. What I think is kind of interesting is that, you know, the media was real quick to frame it as a racial issue. What is underreported is that Zimmerman is actually half Peruvian.
Yeah.
You know, so there is a Latino aspect to this too that media has left out for the most part. So.
All right, well, I'm sorry to cut you guys off, but we are out of time for this week's show. I'd like to thank our guests, Aaron Rodriguez and Deborah Haywood, for giving us an exclusive look into the blogosphere.
We'd also like to give a special thanks to Sean Riley, Mark Zaronsky, and the Broadcast Club for their support and hard work in putting this show together.
Thanks for watching, and you can see this show and all of the Broadcast Club shows on Campus Station 3. I'm your host, Shakara Robinson.
And I'm Crystal Lewis. Thanks for watching the U-View.